Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm using the Hogs and Kisses stamp set from Avery Elle. This is one of their new Valentine's Day stamp sets. I'm stamping the pig holding a heart image in antique linen distress ink. I'm going to be doing some no-line watercoloring today. And that means that the image is stamped in a very light colored ink, and then as I color it in, all of those lines will sort of fade into the coloring. It makes it look as though the image was sketched with a pencil or it wasn't even stamped at all. It gives it a really nice sort of illustration look. I'm going to be painting the background around the pig, so I want to protect the pig area before I can paint it. So in order to do that, I'm going to use some masking fluid. The masking fluid I'm using today is a Molotow masking pen. This is the 2mm size. It's the smaller of the two sizes that they have. And what this does is it creates a barrier over those areas so that as I watercolor over the top, the paper underneath is protected. Wanted to let you know that if you have any stray bits of masking fluid on the tip of your Molotow masking pen, you can use a baby wipe just to wipe those away. I'm also taping down my watercolor piece to a board. This is because I want to prevent any warping of the watercolor paper. The watercolor paper I'm using today is from Canson. This is the Canson Montval Cold Press watercolor paper. And I'm using 3 different colors of distress ink: Abandoned Coral, Wilted Violet, and Cracked Pistachio. These are all new colors that came out in 2015. I love these colors, and I realized I've hardly used them at all since they came out because I've had other projects in mind, so I really want to start making sure that I use these new distress colors, even though they are now almost a year old. Taking a size 8 round brush, and I'm just going to add in some color. I've watered down that abandoned coral pretty well, and I'm making sure that it's fairly light as I add it to my watercolor piece. Next, I'm going to come in with some wilted violet, and I'm going to overlap over into the abandoned coral area just a little bit because I want those colors to mix while on the paper. And since both areas are still wet, they should mix pretty well. I then picked up some cracked pistachio and did that as well. I want to make sure that I'm not overlapping the cracked pistachio with abandoned coral because green and red are complementary colors on the color wheel, and I know that if I overlap those colors that I'll get a little bit of muddiness. Using my heat tool to speed along the drying process, and then I came back in with some more of each color over the top. This time I wanted to make sure that it was very watered down, and I just wanted to add some interesting areas. This is the really fun part about doing a watercolor technique, especially with distress inks. As you add watercolor on top, or just water in general on top, the water sort of pushes to the edge of the wet area, and then you get these nice harsh lines as it dries. It's really, really interesting, and you can't really mimic that look with any other medium. So I'm going to add a little more water straight into these areas just to get a little more interest. And then I used my heat tool to once again speed up the drying process. I'm going to use my medium dots stencil from Simon Says Stamp and also a wet baby wipe. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of color through that stencil. I'm pressing my baby wipe into the stenciled areas, and it starts to pick up the color. Distress ink is reactive with water even after it's dry. So even though this whole watercolor area is dry, I can take a baby wipe or any other water or wet medium or tool and pick up some of that color. And because I'm doing it through a stencil, I'm left with a fun polka dot pattern. Now it's time to remove all of that masking fluid, all of the Molotow masking pen. I'm using a Xyron adhesive eraser to do this, and I realized on some areas, especially over in that green area, that there was some color on top of the masking fluid. So as I rubbed off the masking fluid, it sort of smudged onto the heart, but not a problem because I knew I'd be painting over the top and all of that would get hidden by the colors. I'm using a size 4 round brush to paint on some colors onto this area here. For the pig, I'm using some pale pinks and purples and just a little bit of a brown to add some shading. As I was painting this, I realized that that background was almost the same tone or color that I was adding to the pig. So I was really concerned about the pig standing out on that background. So I wanted to make sure that I added quite a bit of that dark brown on the edges just to make sure that it stood out against that background. Adding more of that pink shade onto his nose, and then I used the brown shade on the hands and feet, or the hooves, I guess you'd say. The brown color I used was a Vintage Photo, and I also used some more of that Vintage Photo for his nostrils and his eyes. As far as the heart goes, I mostly used Abandoned Coral. I wanted to have that same pink shade that's on the background, so I wanted to make sure I used lots of Abandoned Coral. I did bring in some other shades as I started to build color on the left side of the heart. So I brought in a little bit of that shaded lilac, and also brought in some more wilted violet as well. But as I was painting all this, I really wanted that heart to stand out even more. So I did end up bringing in quite a bit more of that Abandoned Coral just to darken up those areas. Added some brown to the edges. I also used pumice stone for the area underneath the pig. So now I'm going to bring in more of that Abandoned Coral, and that's going to really darken and really make it look more red. And this was more of what I had in mind. After all the watercoloring was done, I brought my heat tool back in to speed up the drying process, and then I peeled off the blue tape and removed the watercolor piece from the board. I then took the Hogs and Kisses stamp image from the stamp set and stamped that in the center of the heart using some Versamark ink. I'm going to be doing some heat embossing, and Versamark is the perfect ink for it because it stays sticky. I'm applying some white Hero Arts embossing powder over that stamped image, and I'll shake off the excess, and then I used my heat tool to heat set that until it was smooth and melted. As far as the card base goes for the card, I'm using some Neenah Solar white cardstock in the 110 pound weight, and I'm also using my mini scoring board and Teflon bone folder to score the cardstock at 5.5 to create a top folding card. I then took the watercolor piece, which was trimmed down to 3.5 inches wide by 4 3/4 tall, and I rounded the corners using a We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper. This is the 1/4 inch rounder. I also added some foam adhesive on the back and then pressed that down onto the card base. I wanted to add a little bit of shine and detail to this image here, so I used some glossy accents to add shine to the hearts, and then I used my Wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen to add a bit of shimmer to the largest heart. And I like to dab that on because, like I said before, Distress ink is reactive even when it's dry, so I didn't want to be swiping it across that color because I knew it would kind of disturb the color underneath. So that's the card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.